Hello, my name is Kyle Boone, and welcome back to the CBS Sports College Basketball YouTube page. I'm joined by Adam Finklestein today of 247 Sports. Mr. Fink, let's talk some ball, hey?
Let's do it. Let's do it.
All right. We are just a few weeks out from the 2024 NBA draft. And so leading up to the NBA draft, we're going to talk about some NBA draft prospects. Last week reacted to the Combine. Today, we're going to talk about our top 5 and 1 guard prospects from the 2024 NBA class. And those prospects are, I'm just going to list my list right now. I'm going to rank them, and then you can give your ranking and we can kind of discuss 1 through 6. Stephon Castle, Nikola Topic, Reed Sheppard, Dalton Connect, Devin Carter, Rob Dillingham for me. And I'm going to wait for your reveal here because I want to ask you some questions first on this class, leading with Stephon Castle, who's number 2 on the CBS Sports Big Board. How are we evaluating and projecting Stephon Castle, Mr. Fink? Because at UConn, he was not a true point guard. He was not a true playmaker. He made some sacrifices. But it seems clear during this pre-draft process to NBA teams, he wants to be a point guard. So how are we evaluating him? How are we projecting him? Is he a lead guard? Is he a shooting guard? Is he a center? What are we thinking on Stephon Castle?
You know, I think we touched upon this a little bit last week, and I would just reiterate that my belief in him from a positional standpoint really hasn't evolved much since high school. And for all the talk about how he played the point in high school, that's true. He played with the ball in his hands, but I never necessarily considered that to be his primary position moving forward. To me, he was someone because of his size and his on-off ball versatility, which in and of itself is a major asset, had terrific versatility. You add to that the defense that he proved at the very highest levels of college basketball this season, and now he's got two-way versatility. So I do not consider him to be a true or pure point guard. I think he can have reps on ball. I also think he can have reps off ball. And I'll just say this. He went to Connecticut and basically played the 3 this year. That's not to say they didn't put him in some pick and rolls. That's not to say they didn't put him in places where he could create. And he talked about that. He talked about how he had to, sacrifice for the good of the team. But it's very rare to see someone who is willing to play off ball in college and then really dig their heels into, I want to play the point in the NBA. Usually you hear that more when they get to college. Like, I'm a point guard. It's a big narrative in the recruiting world. That wasn't really a thing, or at least it wasn't something that got a ton of traction in Stephon Castle's recruitment. Now, granted, he committed to UConn very, very early and continued to play with the ball in his hands in both high school and in the UAA, the Under Armour Association. But it was never part of the narrative. They never, it wasn't something where, like, I got text messages about, like, you listed him as a combo, he's a point guard, because that stuff happens pretty frequently. So I just find it a little bit counterintuitive that now the narrative is like, oh, he has to play the point in the NBA. Like, if he didn't make it a thing in college, he's probably not going to make it a thing in the NBA. Yeah. So I say all that to say, like, to me, he is an ultra versatile two-way asset who can play on and off the ball. Offensively, he can guard at least 1 through 3. Defensively, I think there are going to be some times where he can guard 4s. Candidly, I think there are going to be some matchups where he could, the quicker guy is going to be a tougher matchup for him defensively, as good as he is on that end of the floor. So that's kind of where I sit with him. I think he's at his best in a situation where he can be allowed to utilize the totality of that versatility.
And ultimately, I don't think it really matters. I don't like putting prospects in a box. And I think when you're trying to figure out, like, okay, is he a point guard or is he a shooting guard? Is he a wing? It's kind of like with Alex Sarr. Like, does it really matter? He plays kind of positionless in a lot of ways. And Stephon Castle, from what we saw at UConn, I didn't see a ton of, like, playmaking chops. But we also, again, we didn't see a ton of him on the ball in a ton of reps in that role. Ultimately, though, defensively, I think it's super projectable. He showed at UConn that he's willing to make some sacrifices. And yes, he wants to play point guard at the NBA level. He's telling teams apparently that is his role.
Well, is he, or did he say one quote at the Combine? Like, is that what he's like? Exactly. We don't really know the extent to which he's drilling down on that in these private meetings with teams. I just want, That's the narrative that's out there. But as we know, like, the narrative can sometimes be vastly different than what's happening behind closed doors.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And at UConn, of course, he was on a team that won national championship this past season. He was very, very important as kind of at the point of attack, defensive perimeter option. Always guarded kind of the best perimeter option. I think that maybe there's some pre-draft posturing with almost every NBA draft prospect. Whether or not that's true with Stephon Castle or not, probably does not matter. He's a guy who's a competitor. He's willing to play a number of different roles. And I think at the NBA level, we'll figure out exactly what his role is, if that's on the ball, off the ball, some combination of the two. We don't need to put him in a box now. We just know that we like the talent, we like the size, we like the defense, and we hope that the shooting is going to come around. It's going to be more consistent. And I think we'll eventually be talking about someone who's a top 3 prospect in this class if everything hits in the correct way. Stephon Castle, number 1 in my top 6 guard rankings for this.
Where is he overall on your big board?
Number two.
Okay.
So have Alex Sarr at number 1 still. Have Stephon Castle at number 2. Do you have Castle at number 1 among your guards? Do you have him a little bit lower? Where's your?
So in full disclosure, I have not. The way I approach this draft is I think there's such little separation between a lot of these guards that so much of it is going to be situational, like where does he fit best? And so, I think there's some places where he might fit better than others. I think there's other places where you might say, you know what, Reed Sheppard's going to be a better fit there than Castle will because of the shooting or whatever the case may be. So I think for me, it's a case by case basis. And I know that's a cop out, but I'm sticking with that.
Okay. Yeah, that's definitely a cop out. You're the general manager for the Atlanta Hawks. You have the number 1 pick. Zachary Risache and Alex Sarr have reclassified. They're going to go back and play overseas. You have to pick a guard at number 1. Who are you taking?
Well, I wouldn't pick a guard because I already got Trae Young and DeJounte Murray. And
you have to pick a guard.
We know they don't fit, so I'm not putting another guy in there. I think that, man, I don't know. I really don't. I mean, that's the honest truth. Like, I think it's so close that I would want to dig in, see what these guys say in the interviews, see what the medical says, see what, quite frankly, like, one of the things we don't talk about is what do the personality assessments say? Like, we don't talk about that. The amount that's invested in some of the psychological tests, the personality assessments that these guys take. Like, I think all that stuff becomes really, really relevant because the amount of separation here is so minimal. I'm also going to share this. I think I think he looked really good at UConn. Like, I've said this, and I know Ron Holland is not a guard, but put Stephon Castle on G League Ignite and Ron Holland at UConn. Would we be talking about Ron Holland as a top 2 pick? I think we might.
Yeah. And, I think we're on the same page with Ron Holland. Like, I think we both have him as a top 5 prospect.
But he's slipping. I don't know that he's going to go in the top 5. I think he should, but I think it sounds like he might be slipping.
Yeah. Yeah. And we'll see. I'm not buying it. I still think Ron Holland is a guy who's going to end up somewhere in the top 5 of this draft, but maybe only because it's so wide open right now. We have a lot of time before the draft, obviously. Several weeks leading up, there's going to be some pre-draft workouts, some interviews. We're going to find out a lot in the next couple of weeks. Fink, who is the guy among these 6 guards that we mentioned here? And I'll list them off here again. Stephon Castle, Nikola Topic, Reed Sheppard, Dalton Connect, Devin Carter, Rob Dillingham. Who's the one you feel most comfortable projecting to the NBA? Maybe the guy that you feel has the most natural role, the best fit, regardless of landing spot. Like, take it any which way you want.
So I think the guy that I feel like has the, let's say Topic has the widest range of potential outcomes. I think the one with the most narrow range, like, you kind of know to a certain extent what it's going to be. And certainly this could be a precursor for, old takes exposed or whatever. But I think Dalton Connect is someone that we have a pretty good idea of who he's going to be. He's going to be a bucket. He's going to be a scorer, a shot maker, and a more versatile scorer than a specialist. But he's going to be a bit of or at least Right now, we expect that he's going to be a little bit of a defensive liability, at best, kind of a defensive neutral. So that to me is one that you can point to and you can say, all right, I really have a good idea of who he's going to be. One, because we've seen him do it at a high level in college basketball this past year at Tennessee. And two, because he's older. We're not talking about an 18-year-old, 19-year-old kid who we're trying to figure out what he's going to look like in 3 or 4 years, when it's going to come down to, how hard does he work? How hard does he pick up concepts and stuff like that? We know a lot of that for Dalton Knecht already. So I think for me, Knecht is one of those guys where we just have a pretty good sense of what he's going to be. And as I said, I think that's really going to be an advanced scorer, someone who can make shots, space the floor, but also at times come in and be a focal point of your team offensively. It's just the extent to which the offense has to make up for the defense, which I think is the variable that is still to be, played out in the years to come.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good case. I'm going to go with Devin Carter from Providence, only because I feel like he's maybe among these six, maybe the most well-rounded prospect. I mean, he was the Big East Player of the Year this last season at Providence. Always been like a really, really good defensive hound, kind of at the point of attack. Someone who carries himself in a way that, seeing it up close at the combine, that was the first time I'd seen him in person. There's just like an infectious energy about him that, I don't think he carries himself in a way that's like, hey, I'm the best player on the floor, but I'm the guy who's like, you got to go through me. Like someone who you want in your corner, you want on your team. The offense has caught up a little bit with the defense in a way this past season, where his 3-point shot really improved. I'm buying kind of his role as a role player at the NBA level. He's shown some creation ability, and I think all of that is going to be really projectable. He's a guy who has risen for me, here over the last few months, really over the last year, to the point where now he's top 10 on the CBS Sports Big Board. A guy who I feel really comfortable taking inside the top 10. Obviously, fit is going to be a huge consideration, landing spot, where he goes, who he plays with. But I think if you're looking long-term, like there's not a lot of flaws in his game. And I think that's really important. I like the way he carries himself, his pedigree. Obviously, his dad is a former player. And so he's a guy who has kind of grown up in a way where he knows what it takes to be a pro. So it checks just kind of a lot of boxes as someone who I think has a really, really high, safe floor and, has some star potential as well. So in this class, I think that's pretty valuable, right? We're talking about a class that not a lot of evaluators are super, super thrilled about. If you're getting a Devin Carter, somewhere between like 7 and 13, 14 in this draft, I think I'd be pretty excited about getting him. Let's talk about player with the most star potential, and I don't think it's gonna be Devin Carter for me, although I have talked myself into him quite a bit. Someone who you feel like in this 6 guards has the most star potential. Someone who you think maybe if he hits, if the defense comes around, if the offense comes around, if
it's like we're just leading into the Dillingham answer. Yeah, if the defense comes around.
Absolutely. Yeah. Is it Rob Dillingham for you?
Yeah, I think his best moments are probably the most dynamic. But he is the thing that well, let's start with the positives. Okay. First of all, he's highly, highly skilled. And he is a tough shot maker. And this is a tough shot maker's league right now. So his ability to create off the dribble, to create separation, and to, create the level of just high level buckets that we see in the modern day NBA. I think more than anyone else on this list, he's the player that really encapsulates that. What concerns me about him is first and foremost the defense. I mean, if Dalton Knecht is marginal or a liability, Rob Dillingham is somewhere beneath that, because the metrics and the eye test both backed it up at Kentucky. And this is in a year where he got a ton of credit, rightfully so, for his maturation, and he was still a liability on the defensive end of the floor. I mean, you went in and checked his defensive rating on Synergy. I think he was in the bottom 1% for the vast majority of the year, which means 99% of college basketball rated as a statistically better defender than he did, based on whatever algorithm they used to come up with that. But that's pretty glaring. The other thing that gives me pause about Rob Dillingham, and I think this is something that we don't talk enough about, is that we talk a lot about the players and what their games are and how they fit in the modern NBA, but how the NBA evolves in the years to come in the short-term future is going to have a lot to do with how well these kids fit. And right now, I think the pendulum is starting to swing again, where you're seeing the league become more physical again. Freedom of movement, which was a big point of emphasis in the last few years. If you're watching these NBA playoffs, there's not a whole lot of freedom of movement right now. This is the most physical the NBA has been in a relatively long amount of time. And I think that is a bad thing for Rob Dillingham, quite frankly. In a freedom of movement era, someone like Rob Dillingham is going to thrive, where the defense can literally not touch you because he's so quick. He's got a tight handle. He's got, expert shot making skills. But if you can body him and bump him off his line and be physical with him, given what he showed, in terms of the lack of weight at the combine that he's been able to add in the pre-draft process, that's a big concern. So he, to me, is a player that does have a wide range of potential outcomes. He and Topic are those two, for me, the guys who could really go either way. High risk, high reward type prospects. But if everything goes right with Dillingham, given how dynamic he can be with the ball in his hands, he would be someone that I would say, like, okay, his best case scenarios are potentially higher than other guards in this class. I just don't know the probability that those scenarios hit.
Yeah, certainly. I think maybe the most fun guard to watch in this class. You look at kind of the sizzle reel for Rob Dillingham at Kentucky, and oh my goodness, just some of the passing highlights that he makes, some of the shot finishing that he did around the rim at Kentucky. I mean, just like the way he contorts his body, the way that he's able to get some shots off amongst the trees, he's kind of like an acrobat. If he doesn't make it in the NBA, like, he has a future career as, like, someone who works in the circus. He's just really, really nimble with the way that he moves his body. I think there are some shades of Kyrie Irving to his game, and seeing Kyrie kind of dominate in the way that he has during the NBA playoffs, I think has really helped kind of crystallize for me projecting him in the NBA. Kyrie has really leaned into his defense, and I think matured in that way. Dillingham has a long ways to go on defense. I think the size is a real concern, was only 164 pounds at the combine. Obviously some concerns. That's why he's number 6 in my rankings right now among these top 6 guards. But yeah, absolutely.
You've got him at 6 of the guards.
Yes, I do. So
where overall on your big board?
He is number 11 on the big board, which is
Boone, everyone, the registered Rob Dillingham hater.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is lower, obviously, than the consensus. That's lower than where I had him previously. And I want to get your opinion, because it does feel low. I don't feel good about putting Rob Dillingham that low, but I think there are real concerns about the height, the defense, the weight. Like, when you're
the lack of physicality, yeah,
and just
the volume that he needs. Sometimes, I mean, and if you watched him in high school, sometimes the lack of efficiency. He's one of these players that, to me, if I'm representing Rob Dillingham, mm-hmm. I am much less concerned about where he gets drafted and much more concerned with the situation he goes to. Like, San Antonio's got 2 lottery picks. That would be great for Rob Dillingham. Like, you go to a situation where you've got the preeminent rim protector of the next 15 years behind you, where there's an established culture where they're going to, where buy-in is required, that to me would be a home run. And I don't care what spot that's in. Now, obviously they have high picks. So I think if Rob goes to either of those spots, he's happy. But to me, it's not about, like, I would not want this guy in Detroit. You know what I mean? Like, I don't care where they pick. Like, you don't want him in a situation. You want Rob surrounded by positive teammates, where maturation and efficiency are going to be rewarded and not just talked about, but it's going to be, the whole culture. And I know that's a buzzword, but that's going to be something that's going to be reinforced every day, because he's got to buy in defensively. I don't care where he gets drafted. If this guy doesn't guard, if he doesn't get stronger, there's only so good he's going to be. And it's that version. We talked about the range of potential outcomes. If he doesn't guard and he doesn't get stronger, that's like the instant offense guy off the bench who might not be that playable in the playoffs, because, like, okay, you compared him to Kyrie Irving, but, like, there's some Bones Highland in there too. Yeah. Like, the guy who doesn't guard, and, like, okay, we really can't play you in the playoffs because So there is a wide range of potential outcomes. It's why I think that where he ends up is so much more important than what number he ends up at.
Yeah, and two, I think I should probably acknowledge that it may be a slight overreaction to measurables and weight and
I don't think
testing
so.
and kind of projecting. I am a little bit scared off by just a few years ago. I'm sure you remember Sharif Cooper, who I was really high on. One of the best kind of playmakers in the draft class. Ended up measuring, I think it was like 6 foot. And it's like, okay, well, he's a little bit shorter. I think there's some questions about his height, how he's going to fit in the NBA. Maybe not the most athletic, vertical pop type of guard. Ends up slipping to the second round. Yeah, I think there's a lot of things going for Rob Dillingham. He's much more explosive. He's much more quicker. He's got a really tight handle. Maybe not the same passer as Sharif, but I just am worried that maybe I don't want to overrate him too much. And I think getting this new information, we have to kind of reset, recalibrate, and reprocess exactly how we're going to project him. Number 11, maybe a little bit too low, and ultimately,
No, I don't. I wouldn't push back too much on that. I think the big
yeah,
difference between him and Cooper is the shooting. When you're that undersized,
for sure.
if you don't have the shot to force defenders to go over every ball screen, you're really limited. And Dillingham does have that shot. I don't know that Cooper did.
Yeah, for sure.
But I actually don't have too much pushback on 11 because of the wide range of potential outcomes. Again, the question was who has the highest ceiling of these 6 guards, and I think.
Mhm.
If everything goes right, it could be Dillingham, but there are a lot of things that need to go right.
Yeah, for sure. I'm still going to go with Castle. That's why I have him ranked so high. I still think he has the most star potential.
Yeah. If he
There's
shoots,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
There's a lot that if it
that's
connects,
probably the right answer. Yeah.
if he hits, if he adds the shot, if he adds the playmaking, if he's able to kind of show himself as a lead playmaker, at least a guy who you can run your offense through. I think there's some star potential with Stephon Castle. I kind of rank my guys by who I think has the most potential. I want to swing for the biggest fences because, look, I'm not an NBA GM. My job is not on the line. If I miss on some of these guys, I'm not the Atlanta Hawks picking at number 1. If I end up swinging on Alex Sarr and he's a bust, uh, even if I ranked him number 1, start over, new slate next year. The Atlanta Hawks don't have that same decision, so we don't have quite the same types. I would add to Rob Dillingham, going back to him. The landing spots in this draft class, I think, make it kind of particularly interesting and maybe challenging projecting him in this class. You look at number 3, Houston Rockets. Number 4, San Antonio Spurs. That could be a landing spot for him. Detroit, absolutely not. Charlotte, I'd lean towards probably not.
No, I
Portland,
hate that. He's
yeah,
next to, even though he could fit theoretically on off ball, I hate like him
no,
and ball with I don't think that fits defensively as well. I
yeah,
think you can't build off that.
agreed. Portland at 7, not with
Scoot,
Scoot there. Again, Spurs at 8, maybe. Uh, Memphis at 9, no.
Ja.
Yeah, Jazz at 10. Maybe we're talking 11. Chicago, who knows? I don't know. OKC at
Chicago,
number
yeah,
12.
Chicago's got. I mean, that's the thing with a
Yeah,
lot of these guys, and we talked about Holland, but it's like, all right, where do they fit? Where does it make
yeah,
sense? If you're operating on the assumption, like I am, that without star power in this draft, you're going to see teams higher up the draft board looking at fit sooner than you do in a typical year, and that's my assumption. Who knows if that'll be proved accurate or not? But if you start thinking about fit higher up the draft than normal, it starts to impact some guys like Dillingham, like Holland, like some others.
yeah, for sure. And I think his landing spot where he goes in this draft, I think maybe a little bit more fit dependent than maybe some other guys. Like a Donovan Clingan, guys who I think can, Ron Holland can fit in most systems in most situations. I don't think that will be the case with Dillingham. It's going to be interesting to see kind of what his draft stock does here in the next couple of weeks. Let's end on this, Adam Finklestein. Bronny James, earlier today, his agent,
You're
Rich
not going to
Paul.
give Reed Sheppard any love. We're not even going to talk about Reed Sheppard in the guard segment.
I had him number 3. What do you want? I like him.
All right. Let me give my Reed Sheppard pluck, because honestly,
Yeah.
if forced to pick, I would think long and hard about Reed Sheppard as the top guard on my board because, again, I've said this, hand in the air, like just a vastly different player than we saw in high school. The shooting splits in particular, like this is a guy who I think was about a 33 career percent 3-point shooter in high school based on the data that was available through various, Adidas events and the high school events that got statted. And then, the shooting splits at Kentucky were just ridiculous. So you add to that the culture piece because we know he's an absolute warrior, super smart, the defensive playmaking, the metrics with his hands. And on top of that, the 42-inch vertical, which is just another data point to push the button to say, like, okay, here's one other area where he exceeded expectations. So he, to me, is someone, I'm not sure how high is too high for Reed. But when we're talking about these guards, I think he's got to be in that same conversation and might even have a chance to be the first guard taken.
Okay, it's a little spicy. I like it. And I don't totally disagree. I've been mocking him to the Spurs at number 4. I think the fit.
How's that spicy then?
It's a little spicy. It's only because I still have Castle above him.
Right.
But I think in terms of fit, man, the Spurs would be so good. He's such a good defensive playmaker. He's such a good shooter. And I think the playmaking that he showed at Kentucky was really, really exciting, really encouraging. The Spurs have kind of an interesting spot here where they pick at number 4 and number 8. If they are able to kind of replenish their backcourt talent, I think that would be a huge, huge win. My last mock draft, I think I had Reed Sheppard at number 4 and Topic slipping to number 8, which would be just amazing. You add some playmaking with both of those guys, some shooting in particular with Sheppard. And, he was above 50% from 3-point range this past season as a freshman at Kentucky. The Spurs are going to try to add some talent in that backcourt, some playmaking, whether it's through the draft, through free agency, later through trades to try and surround Victor Wembanyama with talent. I think in this draft class, picking at number 4 and number 8, there's a real chance that they could do that. So, yeah, I do have Reed Sheppard number 3 among these 6 guards. He's a top 10 guy on my big board. So yeah, we're giving some Reed Sheppard love. We both, I think.
But
really
you wanted to talk about Bronny. Go ahead.
Hey, I saved him for last, at least, so I wouldn't get any dirty looks here. But Bronny James earlier today, his agent Rich Paul of Clutch Sports announcing that he will stay in the NBA draft. He's not coming back to school. He's not going to transfer to Duquesne. He's not going to come back to USC. He's going to stay in the NBA draft. Participated at the NBA Draft Combine in Chicago earlier this month and did mostly well for his draft stock. Performed well in the second day of scrimmages, had a 40.5-inch max standing vertical jump. His height was maybe not what we had hoped. He was listed at 6'4" at USC, was around 2 inches shorter than that when he measured. But what do you think about the decision for Bronny James to stay in the NBA draft? And how does that kind of shake up what you're projecting in terms of his future with the NBA and this draft in particular?
I think it was exactly what we expected. I think everything has been in line with what we've expected the whole way. And that's, listen, I've been a little more bold with this than some. But I've said from day one that I expect him to be in the Lakers organization next year. And everything that has happened in the last few weeks has supported that claim. The fact that he's only interested in working out for one other team other than the Lakers, according to reports. The fact that he said he's not going to sign a 2-way deal, which means don't you even think about taking him in the second round. The fact that LeBron's free agency is also hanging in the wind here. All these variables are just pointing in the direction of the Lakers are going to have him on their roster one way or another next year. And that has been, I'm not saying that definitively, but that has always been my belief. It remains my belief. And I think if you take off, if you remove what is the obvious propaganda and just look at the facts, I think everything continues to point in that direction. And again, LeBron has been saying this repeatedly for 2-3 years now. Now he's deviated from it publicly in the past, but if you're LeBron James, you don't continue to say time and time again, I want to play with my son. I want to play with my son. Bronny could impact the Lakers right now. Like that was just, what was that, 4 or 5 months ago that he said that? Those are not mistakes. LeBron is, in addition to being the NBA's all-time leading scorer and one of the true greats to ever play this game, and one of the most durable, if not the most durable superstar we've ever seen, this is a man that does not speak by accident. Like, he told us repeatedly what he wanted. And I don't know why more people aren't acknowledging it and just saying, like, yeah, Bronny's going to be on the Lakers. Okay. That's what's going to happen. JJ Redick's probably going to coach the team. By the way, they have a podcast together too. Is that ironic? I don't know. Like, this is all, like, it's like right in front of us, you know? And so I don't really understand why it's like, ooh, breaking news. Bronny's only going to work out for the Lakers and one other. It's like, really? You're kidding me.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Here's a hypothetical for you then, Fink. I'm mostly in lockstep with you there. Because I do think Bronny and where LeBron ends up playing next season are intertwined in a way that, like, you know, I think if Bronny is drafted by the Lakers, LeBron just re-signs with the Lakers. I think it's pretty simple. I would imagine LeBron's going back to the Lakers regardless. However, let's say LeBron goes wherever Bronny is signed, no matter what. If you have the number 1 pick, Adam Finklestein, you're the Atlanta Hawks. You know, if you take Bronny James at number 1, you get LeBron James. Do you take Bronny James?
This is a totally, like, mythical scenario. This ain't happening. Let me just say that, like, the Golden State Warriors tried to trade for LeBron, according to reports. This is no insider information, but it has been reported now by multiple sources. The Golden State Warriors tried to trade for LeBron last at the trade deadline this year, and he rejected it. He didn't want to go play for Golden State, which is in California, which is, you know, San Francisco. You've got Steph Curry, the one guy he said he's wanted to team up with. Like, that's the path to a potential championship. I'm sure they would have been happy to draft Bronny in the second round. He said no. He's staying with the Lakers, but that's not how you negotiate. And listen, like, again, I don't want to speculate on, you know, how LeBron is handling his free agency, because I'm not sure LeBron needs to negotiate. But I think it's very clear that they want to stay in LA. I know he and Savannah both had comments recently about how they miss Miami. Again, he had a chance to go to the Warriors. Steph Curry is the guy he said he would love to play with. He didn't. When push came to shove, he said, no, thank you. I think he wants to be in LA. That is where their lives are based right now. I think that's where Bronny wants to be. You know, like, hey, do you want to go to Duquesne and move to Pittsburgh? Not really. Do you want to go to, you know, SMU and follow Andy Enfield down to Dallas? Not really. I kind of like it in LA. So, like, they ain't going to Atlanta, my man. They're just not doing it. You know, like, LeBron is I think they're staying in LA. Would I in this draft, let's say for 3 years of LeBron James and Bronny, would I take Bronny at number 1 in this completely mythical world of Eye on College Basketball podcast? Sure. Over Alex Sarr, why not?
Yeah.
But I don't think LeBron would have any interest in playing. That's just not happening. Let's just say that.
Oh my gosh, Fink. Just answer the question. Just answer the question.
Yes, I take him. I take him.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. You did get that.
I reject the premise of the question, but the answer is yes.
I know. I gotta kind of lather you up before I really go deep and answer the topic.
The Boone clips on this episode are phenomenal, by the way. Like, we're
oh man, yes, I would. If I'm the Atlanta Hawks and I take Bronny James at number 1, knowing that I get LeBron for the next 3 years, I'm doing that. I'm picking Bronny James over Alex Sarr.
I take you at number 1 to get LeBron James, but you know,
thank you.
You and Wemby right behind you, package deal. Let's make it happen. But you know, it's not happening.
Yeah, like, maybe it's a different conversation if Zion Williamson is up there at number 1 or Victor Wembanyama is up there at number 1. But you know, in this class in particular, like, there is no consensus number 1 right now, and the guarantee to potentially get LeBron James for a few years, even in this wildly mythical scenario.
Let me ask you: Do you think that's like a plausible scenario? I'm turning. Oh, okay. Just making sure.
I don't. But you know, it wouldn't be terribly surprising because Bronny or LeBron can eventually become a free agent later this summer, if you know during this draft process Bronny becomes enamored with a team, or a team becomes enamored with Bronny, and there's some sort of backdoor deal that, hey, look, we're going to select Bronny at number 20, or we would like to select Bronny at number 18. What do you think about this? We will do this, this, and this, and let's negotiate something. to get you out of LA, it wouldn't be terribly surprising. I don't think it's going to happen. But I think there's a world in which something like that could happen. LeBron.
I think LeBron at this point. I think LeBron is only playing for
Yeah.
championships and to play with his son.
Yeah.
So if he's going to leave LA,
Yeah.
and I'm totally speculating here. Let me just say that right off the bat. If he were going to leave LA and he doesn't want to move up the coast to Silicon Valley, where he can play with Steph Curry, like where else would he want to go then? You know, we're talking about a short window here, and theoretically, they would have taken Bronny too. So, like, if not there, then where? That's what I come back to. So again, I think like there are these talking points. You know, like there's like, oh, there's Miami, but then there's the facts. Like, hey, Pushka, do you want to get traded to Golden State? Like, we can make this work. No, thank you. I mean, that's what we are being told happened at the trade deadline. I think that is the most telling piece of information we have.
Yeah. You know, some people may not know this, but LeBron James is from Ohio. The Cleveland Cavaliers selected him #1 overall. And he played there and won a championship there. Maybe the Cleveland Cavaliers make a move. Okay. I'm just,
I think that's, you know, somewhat more plausible than Atlanta, but that's like a 0.1% chance possible instead of just 0.
It's likely not happening. I do believe that LeBron stays in LA. I do believe that Bronny ends up a Laker. We'll see how this draft process plays out, but I do think it's a very interesting kind of narrative surrounding Bronny, and obviously he's going to stay in the NBA draft. We'll see what that looks like over the next couple of weeks as we lead up to the 2024 NBA draft. That's going to do it for us today, Fink. If you are listening to this show, please subscribe on the CBS Sports College Basketball YouTube page. Follow Adam Finklestein on Twitter. Follow Kyle the Boone on Twitter. Follow Nada Edwards on Twitter. Why are you not following Nada Edwards, the greatest Charlotte Hornets content producer in the history of the world? Go do that right now, and we will see you guys next week. Same spot, same day. Till then, take care.